Well, good morning, everyone. It's now noon in Sao Paulo, 4 p.m. in London, and 8 a.m. in Los Angeles, right? So today, I'm very, very excited to have this different type of life that we have had in the past 7 weeks when we first started our series on gender and peace. We have had some very exciting topics here, and I'm very thankful for all those who have contributed. And today, especially to these exceptional women who are here to talk to you about voice and gender, finding your voice. Peggy Pharrell from London, Jill Diamond from New York, and Los Angeles speaker, expatriate, Domingas Person, a Paulista by birth, right? And so today they will be talking to you over the next 60 to 90 minutes about voice, from different perspectives. And Domingas will explain this to you very shortly. I just wanted to introduce her first before she introduces Peg Pharrell and Jill Diamond. Domingas is a journalist and voice talent based in Los Angeles today. So for 5 years, she was the official on-air announcer and commentator for the TNT channel, Turner Television. She hosted for some of the most important shows of TNT in the area of entertainment. These include the Academy Awards, the Grammys, Miss Universe, the Golden Globes, Emmys, and so much more, More than 20 years of experience talking about music, theater, movies, and covering film festivals, both public and cable television. Now she hosts a workshop called How to Communicate Well with the Camera. So,
wow, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, Jay, for inviting me to be part of this meeting, to take part in these important conversations with the Global Institute for Peace, and these conversations that are being put together are so important. I had a chance to have a look at some of them that are available on YouTube. By the way, this meeting is happening live here now and will also be available on YouTube later on for everyone to watch. And I had the chance to watch some of the different subjects that you mentioned and that have been addressed. And I'm real glad that I've been able to join these two professionals in the talk that we are starting now. I will soon introduce them to you all, but I'm just taking the chance to warm up a little bit, so maybe I can say something about myself so you get to know me a little and also know and also understand why I am so happy to be here moderating this talk. I want to say just that I graduated. I am a journalist. I graduated in the 90s, and I soon started working in television, which is where I wanted to work. And I soon became a reporter and a host, which is what I have been doing for all these years. But I also had the chance during this trajectory to work as an actress, as a singer, as a voice artist, and a couple of years, actually 4 or 5 years ago, with the boom of social media, I realized that I had gathered tools that would be very helpful for other communicators, for other people who wanted to be communicators, because I learned it the hard way. When I started working on television and I would see myself on video and I would hear myself, I would be very not satisfied with what I was seeing and hearing. So I would keep thinking, why am I talking like this? Why am I sounding like that? Why am I like that? So it took me many years to finally realize that, to finally enjoy and to finally accept what I was doing and what I was portraying. So this is what I started to teach the people that wanted to communicate well with the camera, which is my own workshop. And I think this is very important because it goes to it goes to this very not easy, but very rewarding path that is to find your own voice. And I think this is just, a spark of what these great professionals are going to be talking about today here in our meeting. So let me introduce Peggy Pharrell, the director of Vocality. She has a consultancy called Vocality. I love the name. And she's been working for more than 25 years with people on their presentation and their communication skills. A client list that includes international law firms, investment banks, teaching institutions, global corporations, and Peggy teaches communication techniques that help bring differences, profound differences, impactful, meaningful people experiences, and in the way that people will experience you. Hello there, Peggy. And our next participant is Jill Diamond. Jill is also a seasoned communication coach who's been working for more than 20 years with international professionals, with individuals. And she has her own method: write it, show it, voice it, working with passion, with precision, with impact. Jill lives between New York City and also São Paulo, Brazil. And Jill is also the person to look for, the person with an accent training expertise, which is important for people, for individuals, for professionals from outside the United States who want to compete in the English-speaking marketplace. So these are our two participants, and I'm very glad that we're all here together. Could we say a little bit about this? Could we start with Peggy?
Thanks, Dominguez. Yes, I started out years and years, possibly centuries ago, when I trained for the stage. And I trained a lot and learned a lot about vocal technique, amongst other things. And when it became clear that I had to make some decisions about diversifying, I went into consulting and starting to work with people around their communication skills. And that's when I really realized that although virtually everybody has to use their voice, very few people know the first thing about their voices. And in fact, many people would say that they hate the sound of their voice. And I thought that was a great pity. And so I took it upon myself to try and come up with some teaching techniques to help people who were not necessarily actors or singers to learn more about how they can use their voice.
Perfect. Which is, I think, one of the things that we've talked about, that, not everybody is a voice expert, but we are all communicators. We're going to be talking more about that as soon as Jill talks a little bit about herself. Please, Jill.
Thanks, Dominguez. I want to say thank you for having me, USP. Thank you, Gerson. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Peggy and Dominguez, today. I also have a background in performance as a singer, as an actor. And so from a very young age was trained how to use my voice, how to use my body, how to project, how to speak. And I also, like Peggy said, well, what else can I do with that besides be a performer? And I went into a consultancy business. I had a company in New York City for many years. Today, I work as an independent consultant to some of the biggest companies, Fortune 500 companies, in providing not just accent training, but communication skills training. And I do want to just bring something up that perhaps some of you are aware of. There was a study that was done back in 1967 by Albert Mehrabian. And it was done at Clark University in the United States. And what the professor wanted to do was he wanted to understand when we say one thing, but we feel or we think something different, our message does not always come across because our voice and our body language and the words that we're speaking are not in alignment. And so what he found in his study is that when we feel or think something differently than what we're actually saying, 55% of the message is influenced by our face and our hands and our posture, what people see. And 38% is the voice. Now, I always say, and I just want to finish introducing myself by saying, we are the expert at whatever it is that we do. It is our job to show up 100% prepared. And when we show up 100% prepared, our message, our words, they matter, and they can be 107% of our communication. But the voice, which is what we're going to talk about today, is 38%. And we need to be in alignment with our message. And I hope that what we're going to share today about the voice will help people to check in with, well, how can they find their voice? How can they be better in their communication?
Perfect. And this also leads to this moment where I think it was in your material I was going through, Jill, where we said we are communicators. And so people might wonder, but I'm not a communicator. That's not my job. But we are communicators from the moment that we wake up and start talking to people, messaging people, calling and talking to everyone. So the importance of this is really not just for experts, you know, it's immense.
That's
well,
right.
How about we, just a reminder that this is a moderated conversation. If you have your questions, please place them in chat. We're going to be going through them pretty soon. We're going to be showing, two video clips further ahead. And then we're going to also have the questions. Can we start talking a little bit? Let's start with Peggy. I think that understanding what our voice is or where it comes from, being more aware of our own body, brings us a different knowledge, a different understanding of how important it is. Can you start talking about that, please, Peggy, the voice as an instrument?
Yes, I'm fond of telling people that the voice is an instrument, and it's easy for an actor or a singer to regard their voice as an instrument, certainly. But I will happily tell people that everyone has that instrument. And if you start to regard your voice as an instrument, you can start to think about adding technique. And I love to encourage people to strive to be something called a competent amateur. And by that I mean somebody who isn't necessarily a professional. And I should say at this point, when I say amateur, I don't want people to be thinking, oh, not good enough to be a professional, they're just an amateur. I'm thinking much more about what amateur really means, which means to do something for the love of it. And all of us, either ourselves or we know people who are wonderful at playing instruments or being able to dance or do a sport, who are not professionals, but boy, are they competent. And so this is what I invite people to do, is to learn a few very easily learned techniques. I can't guarantee after a workshop that they will then be singing at the Royal Opera House if it ever opens again. But it does mean that you can start to apply technique and enjoy your voice.
Great. That is already a start, right? And if we were to go further into the details of how the voice is made, how the voice sounds, then we would go to to Jill to talk a bit about the components of our voice.
Sure, absolutely. And let me just say, I love, Peggy, your definition of the amateur, for the love of it, right? It's awesome. I love it because, you know, I always say, look, I want to work with you if you are passionate about learning about your voice. Because if you don't have a genuine interest in communication or understanding what these elements are, so it's this idea, the love, right? You have to love it, communication. So what I want to say about the elements of the voice, you know, volume, energy, melody, rhythm, projection, speed. You know, the bottom line, there's so many things, right, about the voice. Resonance. How do we use the chest voice? How do we use the head voice? How do we get a little bit of both so that we get a warm sound? There's so many components to the voice, the ones that I just mentioned. And this is the skill, right, that one comes to develop, to understand, well, why does melody matter? Why does rhythm matter? Rhythm matters because certain languages work with stress time languages. Others are syllable timed. So if you don't understand rhythm, you may not understand how to best use the language that you're speaking. But a lot with everything, volume and melody and all these things that I mentioned, what I really want to say that's so important when it comes to using your voice, it's not just about the words, right? It's about how you communicate the words, and you have to have the intention to be heard. I think that with the intention to be heard, all of these conversations, the presentations, the dialogues, the intention to use these skills and to be heard is what really matters when it comes to the elements of the voice.
Oh, and also, Jill, not sure if you're finished, but this is something that I was reading about the work that you do. It's not just, once again, not just about people who want to be voice professionals, but also people who have their presentation or their board meetings or, just a weekly meeting where they have to do something, which is when we go back to what we just said, that, people are all communicators. Especially nowadays, everybody has to do, even if you work for a corporation, you started to have to do your own presentations. Right. Everybody is a presenter nowadays, right?
Absolutely. And just if I just quickly could say that 38% we talked about, for those people who are communicating on the phone or who don't turn on the video, what happens to that 38%, right? It really goes up. And so we really have to understand the voice.
Yes, we even have the concept that you have to be video ready nowadays, right? Video ready all the time. Well, so getting even more detailed information, speaking about the voice, I find all this very fascinating. I mean, Peggy, could you talk to us so that the audience understands better, so we all understand better where the voice comes from? How can we talk about where it starts?
Yeah, well, it's physiological as much as anything, and I think the first thing to understand is the power that drives the voice is breath, your breath. So one of the best things you can learn to do is learn some breathing technique. And the breathing technique doesn't have to be a newfangled, odd way of breathing. It's really just understanding, perhaps all over again, the way we were designed to breathe. And by that I mean, you really want your breath to come from your center. You can't see all of me, and when I'm talking about my center or your center, I'm talking about the diaphragm. And the diaphragm just sits right under the sternum, where the sternum finishes. So it's up high, and it's a network of muscles which control the lungs. And if you can start to think more about initiating your breath from there, and indeed then initiating your voice from that centered place, then you start to understand about where the voice comes from. The voice then travels up through the resonators that we have, initially the ribs, and then the throat, and then through the vocal cords, and out through, of course, the face, particularly the mouth. And that's how the voice is created. And really going back to how we're designed to use our voice and to use our breath is the best first step to getting a good technique around your voice. So that's where it comes from, your center.
You're not going to leave us on just this, right? Let's learn some breathing techniques now. I'm just so amazed at how, something which is really natural. I mean, we breathe without thinking, and we talk without thinking about that either. So I can't stress the importance of, just remembering to actually breathe now in our days, right? This is something I tell my... Yes, please.
If I may continue, a lot of people make a mistake when they think, I must take a good breath, I must breathe, and they breathe up instead of down. And it's really about trying to breathe down into the center rather than bringing all of your breath up. When your breath comes up, it then gets kind of stuck in the upper part of your chest. And that is going to make a huge difference into how your voice is produced, and very much about how your voice is experienced by others. And more about that when we talk about how to use the voice for conflict resolution. Yeah.
And Peggy, just as adding up to that is that if you take deep breaths and if you start exercising that, how much of releasing anxiety or depression or making your brain work better, how much more we could have if everybody started breathing.
It makes a huge difference. If you think about when you go to the dentist and you're going to have an injection, you might feel a first impulse to just hold still and tense up, which will make everything worse. And if you breathe down into your diaphragm, it relaxes everything. Finally, you are looking for something which is a relaxed way of breathing rather than a tense way of breathing. And so if that kind of breathing technique will change so many aspects of your life for the better. Yeah, that's why we're designed to breathe that way.
Yes. I see Jill just going, yes, yes, yes. I will ask you about our next question, Jill, but please tell me something about the people that come to you with the breathing issues, that people are really, they just forget that this is a tool that we have.
Right. I mean, I think both of you have said most of what I would say to anybody I work with, right? I mean, the idea is when you breathe, so much can happen. You pause, right? When you speak and you pause, what do you use the pause for? You use the pause to gather your thought. How can you better gather your thought? If your brain is working for you and you're not working for your brain, how does your brain work for you? Breathe, breathe. I mean...
Breathe, everybody, breathe. Please take a deep breath.
And that deep breath, right, is so important that Peggy is talking about. Because when we stack our breath, we call it stacking our breath. If we breathe shallow and we stack, right, we don't exhale completely, right? It's in that exhalation and then that next inhalation that we can really get that all of the qualities of the voice that we're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus, all the tension releasing and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, so going from this moment, can you tell me more, Jill, about you talked about the intention, you talked about the attention. Tell me about the authentic voice. What can you look for? What I know there are many aspects of what
makes an authentic voice.
What makes an authentic voice? Exactly.
Yeah.
What is an authentic voice?
Right. I think both of you have already talked a little bit about how quite often people don't like their own voice. And especially when, right, not just necessarily when they're speaking, but when they listen back to it. Oh my gosh, is that me? And what I want to say about that is the reason we sound so differently when we listen back to a recording of our voice is because when we speak, there's a resonance that we get in our head. We have the bones, right? It creates a different sound when our voice is going out than when we're just listening and we're not speaking. But it is a great idea to listen to the sound of your voice when you're not speaking, so that you could become familiar with the tone. You could become familiar with the speed. You could kind of listen. Am I breathing? Am I pausing? And we need to ask ourselves, and this kind of brings me to this notion of the tone of our voice. All of us, Peggy was saying our voice is an instrument. Think about a piano. There are different types of pianos. There's an upright piano, there's a baby grand, there's a grand piano, but all of the pianos have strings, like we have, our vocal cords. And understanding what to expect from that piano, if it's an electric piano or if it's that upright. We have an expectation when we look at the piano, what we might hear. When people look at us, they make assumptions about how we should sound. And quite often we create a habitual tone, something that either our family tells us or society tells us, this is how a woman's voice should sound. Oh, maybe it should sound high to sound feminine, or maybe it should sound low so I can fit into the professional world. So we get taught how our voice should sound. But what we need to do is we need to tap into what is optimal, what is the best voice for our body, the size of our body, our vocal cords. And the only way we can really do that, Dominguez, is to listen to our voice and just get familiar with it. So that's what I would say about having that authentic voice. And then, by the way, those things that Albert Mehrabian talks about, the voice and the body and the message, they can work together so we can have impact and influence in our speech.
So once again, I think that I love this because, it's all about not just practicing, but paying attention to who you are, to your optimal voice. I love the expression. I didn't use that. I'll start using it now. But also to being, that doesn't mean that you have to just acknowledge who you are and accept who you are, but also if you're not happy about it, that you can also change that and go to something that is, of course, if you are a small piano, you will never be the grand piano, but you can come closer to what you would like to achieve, which is the work that you do, to help people see what their possibilities are. Because this is very important, I think, Jill, just to sum up the thing that what are we supposed to sound like, what people expect from us and what we expect from us as well, yes. Right? I think this is the hard thing to deal with. What are the expectations regarding this person, this professional, right? Yes. And the references that we have.
Yes. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head, everything you said. And the key is listening to ourselves so we can become more familiar with our voice.
Yes. I think it is really very much, to echo what's been said, a question of being self-aware, which I think of as being a very positive state, as opposed to self-conscious, which can be a very negative state where you torment yourself with negative dialogue and say, this is terrible and everybody hates it. Where self-aware, you really can't get better at anything until you become self-aware. And as Jill was saying, you know, if you're a pianist, the more you know about that piano, the better you're going to have a relationship with it. And that's what the voice is all about. It's just being aware in a positive way and knowing that there are things that you can do. Too many people think, I hate my voice, I can't do anything with it, I never know how it's going to sound. And that really doesn't have to be the case.
Yes. So this goes back to what I just said at the beginning. It's not an easy way, you know, to find your voice, because, you know, it has to go through so many psychological matters that we really can't get into at this moment. But, you know, won't be easy, but I think it's the best and the only way actually to work. I mean, right? It's going to be so much work to try and do something different than what you have and from what you can be, you know. So it's just it's once again, it's just like breathing. You don't have to, you know, it's just natural to us, but we have to relearn that. I mean, we have to go through that once over and over again, right?
You got it. Yeah.
Well, we have some clips that Jill and Peggy prepared for us to watch, so we can see just in person the aspects that we are talking about. So I think we're going to start with the South Korean Foreign Minister Kang She's in an interview, and we're going to see a little excerpt of that interview.
I hope someday come a time when being the first woman in anything isn't news anymore, because it is so frequent.
Well, Foreign Minister, thank you so much for your time today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you've done a lot of interviews, both as an interviewer and an interviewee when it comes to humanitarian issues and other global affairs. But I'm hoping that today might be one of those few times we can lighten things up a little bit and get to know you a little bit more as a person and talk a little bit about your personal journey as a woman leader.
I'm very happy to.
All right, so let's get right into it. I wanted to begin with your passion for global affairs. When did you first spark an interest in bridging cultures?
Well, I guess I always grew up very curious about the world outside my own country, other countries and other peoples, and perhaps having a father who was a first-generation broadcaster in this country who dealt with issues outside the country was part of that. But then having an opportunity to go and study abroad certainly made me much more aware of the diversity that's out there, and how difficult, in fact, it is for that diversity to communicate and to find harmony and in all of that. So intercultural communication was what I majored in as my PhD program in graduate school, but I really didn't think that I would have the opportunity to practice it as the country's top diplomat now.
So we just watched the South Korean foreign minister speaking. She's in an interview. She was speaking English and answering questions in English. And I would like to, from all that we've been talking about, can you start, Peggy, telling me about what you perceive, what shows up in this South Korean minister's voice?
When I first came across her, and it would have been, watching the news, and I was struck with how she seems to have got these critical elements to coexist. And these elements are that she's relaxed, or she appears to be relaxed, but that does not come at the expense of her commitment to what she's saying. And that is a sort of a magical alchemy. You know, I can't tell you it has to be 40%, 60%. You know, this is not something that can be taught. It probably can be learned through self-awareness, though. And she seems to have these two critical elements coexisting. And that means that you want to listen to her. Nothing about what she is presenting to us gives us any unease. She just seems to be, to use a word that we're all using right now, she really seems to own her moment there. And it's a delight to just experience her. So that's really what struck me about her communicating style.
Yeah, you can. I think maybe Jill. Would you like to say something about her too, Jill? Because we said, you know, that she just seems like a natural, right? It just seems.
Well, listen. Did you hear what her father did as a living? He was a broadcaster.
Exactly. So it was in the family. I also noticed that. Yes, but of course she could not have had that. And if it wasn't for her too, you know, just a natural thing to be this relaxed. And also, I think that she has. I think that we see. I don't know. I like that Peggy said that she seems to be relaxed. She seems to be fine with that, and also she seems to be, to me, to be a charismatic person, which is important in communicating, right? Now we have a different video where we see Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen. And it's a different video because she's not in a dialogue, she's not in an interview, which also helps making people comfortable. She's making an announcement. So it's a very different experience. But I'm sure you notice differences in that.
We do not believe in merely looking on as others defend their freedom. As the situation in Hong Kong continues to deteriorate just weeks before the 23rd anniversary of the handover, Taiwan will continue to provide necessary humanitarian assistance to the people of Hong Kong. Taiwan has joined the international community in urging the Beijing authorities to honor their obligation to respect Hong Kong's fundamental freedom.
Now, here's the question to Jill. If you were to coach the president of Taiwan, what would you start with, Jill?
Right. Well, I mean, I think all of us can see right away that there is a clear difference, right? When Peggy was talking about the breath, we see how the Prime Minister of South Korea really supports her breath. And so it's warm and inviting. We want to listen. And I think in the case of the president of Taiwan, there feels to me like a more constriction on the actual vocal cords. So I would talk about the breath. I would talk about relaxing this part of the throat in order to then get that diaphragmatic breathing to support the vocal cords. But then I would also talk, Dominguez, a little bit about accent. And I would say, as I mentioned before, every language has a rhythm. And in English, we are a stress-timed language. And what that means is every syllable is not equal. We need to put more emphasis on certain syllables so that we show the contrast between the important sounds and the less important sounds of a word. And so one of the things that we're hearing when we listen to that clip is a more what we would call a syllable-timed language. So what she's doing is she's superimposing her native language on top of English. And so I would work with that. I would definitely start with the rhythm of the language to help her kind of understand that if she can get that, she can build a little bit more rapport and bring people a little more closely in. So that's where I would start.
I think she needs you, Jill.
Oh.
I'm available. Let's send her a note. Yes. Well, it's just one. How would we be able to? I think that we have mentioned already here. Just a reminder that Jill is an accent training expert. So I think that we, or just people who are not accent training experts would just notice that there is something that really refrains them from paying attention to what she's trying to communicate. So that is a barrier in her communication. We're not just talking about, oh, she has an accent, what a funny or how strange. It's not just that. We're talking about the way that it makes her communication not work as well as it should, right? I would say, how do we people who don't have the chance to work with you, Jill, how would they start paying more attention to that? Because maybe some people don't even realize that is a problem in there. Because I think that when we're young, I don't know if it's a natural thing, if it's in the genes that you just learn that, if you're good at languages, people say that. But, how do you start to maybe work on that?
Right. I'll just say briefly, and for the sake of repetition, to keep it simple for everybody, if you wanted to start somewhere, I would start by researching what is the difference between a stress-timed language and a syllable-timed language. And once you understand that, then you can listen to, in their native language, listen to those languages being spoken and see if you can start to hear, oh yes, this is more equal, there is less of a variety here, or less of a contrast to this person who happens to speak with the correct stress time. I would start there without going into too much detail. That's where I would start the research.
I see. I'm going to have to take some courses with you too, right, Jill? I was trying to get some tips here. But I see. I guess then the sound of music, right? Which is something that you're talking about. Start
Absolutely.
To language as music.
As music.
Well, that's very, very interesting. Well, I would like to ask, yes, I see Jay sent a message here. Do we have any questions? Does anyone want to ask anything at this point before we move on? Maybe, Jay?
Interesting when you're saying about listening too. In the series of lives we have had in the past 7 weeks, we had two women, one of them a large entrepreneur in Brazil, Luisa Trajano, and the other one a judge for Miami-Dade County, that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should practice listening a lot, So when you listen to the way other people speak, when you just perceiving how this is happening. What I would like to ask both of you as coaches, how long do you think one should dedicate to that? What level of success can one expect in what period of time?
Good question. I think if you can understand, and that comes down to the teacher as well, if you can understand the relationship between technique and the instrument, then you can make strides forward. It's a difficult thing to teach because there aren't any visuals. I mean, not really, and so you really have to invite your student to feel, to listen in different ways, to step out of the box. And I think really when things move forward at a huge pace is when people start to enjoy what they're doing with their voices. And nothing gives me greater pleasure than to work with people who in high school hated Shakespeare, and then, maybe not so many years after that, really enjoy it because they understand so much more about how the voice is related to the words and to the emotions and that sort of thing. So it's really trying to invite people to enjoy rather than you have to do this. And then I think, it's probably the same with anything, but that's really how it's going to happen. I think that is what's going to make a difference to how quickly or slowly things happen for the student.
Yeah. Yeah, and I might add that it always depends where we're starting, right? So, and a lot of where we start depends on how passionate somebody is about communication. How what is their skill to start with? And I think it's really important for people to realize, Jay, that you can come into this world with a really great set of pipes, right? We call our vocal cords our pipes. You can come into this world with a passion for communication. But if you don't train, you will never become either that amateur, that person who loves it and is really great at communication, or that professional who uses it in one capacity or another. Because great speakers are not born. They do have to be taught how to use what they have. Otherwise, you hit a wall. So just to answer your question directly, I always say, if you could give me 3 months of your time and you do the work, you are going to have the tools that you need to be self-aware, to set your goals, and to, if you don't get it right the first time, you'll know how to go back and error correct until you become that amateur or that professional. So for me, I always say, let's start with 3 months and let's see where you are after that. I don't know what you think, Peggy.
That a deal, Jay? 3 months?
The period for me. Yeah. I find it hard to put a time scale, but people need to have a time scale. I mean, when I worked in the corporate world, they wanted results, by the end of the hour. So, but absolutely, if you could really, really commit for 3 months, then it's hard to imagine that no progress would have been made.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as we move on, I would like to just like to say, as just listening to this period of time that Jill was saying, and Peggy, we're like, how long should it take for a person to develop this skills and all that? I would just like to say, I hope I have not been offensive to the Taiwan's president saying that she needs training or that she needs to sound different. It's just that as we have said, it is hard work, because not only you have to train your instrument, not only you have to wish that, not only you have to practice that, you have to go through this process that can sometimes you have to want that to happen. So we are saying that the president of Taiwan needs coaching, but maybe for her it's something that she hasn't considered. She's a leader, and I would like to start talking a little bit about leadership here and how the voice can be used in leading, and how important it is for the topic that we're talking about, which is finding your voice and how to use your voice for peace. So I would like to start asking. How since we're talking about global peace, we're talking about how to use that voice, right? Are we talking about peace amongst countries? Are we talking about peace between individuals, groups, communities? What exactly are we talking about? How can we reach that? So Peggy, how could we use, or how can voice be used as an aid in a conflict resolution or in conflict resolutions?
I think, yes, we have to stick with what's achievable. And I'm not sure that I can create global world peace with my voice. Not today, maybe tomorrow.
Come on, Peggy.
But certainly we can use our voices for achieving perhaps better outcomes in our conflicts with other people or with groups. And the voice is something that carries the emotion so innately. And so we have to be very careful about that, because conflict comes out of emotion and a mismanagement of emotion. And what I would encourage people to do is to strive for the kind of voice, particularly with women, that is centered and level and I might say assertive. Too many times I've heard people say, well, she was sounding very assertive, when a woman might have actually been sounding angry. That is not assertive, that's angry. And something happens to the voice when we, men and women, get angry, and it usually goes higher up in the chest and it's harsher. So assertive is something that's neutral and centered and relaxed and less likely to invite a negative reaction from whomever you're speaking to. If your voice isn't assertive, it can be one of several things. It could be aggressive, it could be defensive, submissive, passive-aggressive, whatever that might be, but that usually has a hint of sarcasm. All of these things will spark up conflict in a conversation, in a discussion, where assertiveness leads to the idea of concessions and dialogue rather than argument and conflict. So I think an assertive voice for women, certainly, and for men, are voices that are centered, coming from the diaphragm, filling the torso, rather than somewhere that's higher up in the chest or even up high in the voice, purely because that will spark off an emotional reaction, and that's when conflict resolution is really difficult to achieve. So that's how I'd use the voice for peace.
We did have a question here from Victor, which I think would be interesting to come in now. He asks Jill and Peggy, would you recommend any vocal technique to reconnect with your audience if you have the impression that your audience has lost interest in your speech? So this is a question from Victor.
I had an interesting thought about that. I saw that in the chat. Victor, a lot of times people think when you want to get someone's attention that you need to speak louder and you raise your voice. And of course that is a technique. But there's also the technique of bringing your voice down, right? So it's not just about volume being louder or more quiet. It's really about variety. So you have to change what you're doing. You have to change what you're doing with your voice. It could be the speed. It could be the volume. There's just so many different ways. It's all about change. That's how you're going to pull somebody back in. That's what came to my mind.
I think it makes so much difference if we're doing it, across Zoom or whether we're in the same room as people. If you're in the same room, I would absolutely say the thing to do is to connect with your eyes. If you're looking at somebody, they have to listen, which is why children seem to instinctively know. I don't think anyone teaches them that if they're not looking at you, they're not listening to what you're saying to you, and they're not signing up to whatever it is that you're asking them to do. And so if you can marry your eye contact to your voice, then you're much more likely to keep people engaged. And there are different techniques for that as well. Otherwise, I would certainly, refer now to Dominguez, who knows more about how to connect with people through the camera. Maybe Dominguez, you could say something here.
Well, I was actually just laughing a little bit because it reminded me of my stage days when we would have, being on stage in a play, during a play, and, things start to get a little boring, maybe for the person who's there watching, or maybe he's just tired, or this person hasn't slept or has had a bad day and they came to watch your play and then they start falling asleep. And then what would you do? Because you don't want, the audience to notice that there are people there that are sleeping, because, it might influence others as well. So we would just speak loud or come to this person and start, giving that line or that moment where you would speak louder, just what Jill said, But we're talking about a play, and, this is just a fun moment that we have, because that is actually desperating to see that your audience is falling asleep. But that also has to do with, maybe not be about you, it may be something that this person has, but how would you catch their attention, right? Without having to make lots of gestures and changing the rhythm of your voice. But it's all a whole part. I think it's a whole coaching that we would have to do on how to attract your audience's attention. But I think that what has been brought by you too is that there are so many elements that need to come into a fine tune, right? Like to be assertive, to be confident, and to have a confident voice, and so as to be so confident that you don't really know what this person, how this is. I mean, you're doing your best to communicate well. You really expect that this communication will get to the other person, will go through the barrier, of the so many layers that there are, so that you can communicate well. I don't know if I have answered, but I remember that thing about the person sleeping in the first row, and it's like, tell me something about that, Jill.
No, I mean, I know we were going to talk a little bit more about attention and intention. And so I just think it's a really great segue here, because so much is about our intention. So even if we are on Zoom, right, what is our intention with our voice, right? So let's back up. Attention. What do we mean? Let's put our attention on the vocal skills that we've been talking about, whether it's the breath or whether it's the rhythm, which are two things we've talked a lot about. But there's also emphasis. When I want to emphasize a word, which is so important when we talk about being assertive, when we talk about resolving conflict, when we talk about difficult conversations, how do we sound confident? How do we sound sure? We sound sure by the way we use the melody in our voice, making sure that it drops on our statements. It is a statement. I am making a statement. I am not asking a question. My voice is not going up. My voice is going down. And when my voice resolves, and it resolves on a really good word. And now I'm going to say the next technique. And we are not afraid to be silent after that word. So this combination of finding the right words, using the right melody, and being silent, we show respect for the dialogue. We give room for the other person to respond. And we give space for our brain to, again, work for us, so that we're not just working for our brain. So I'm talking about the putting the attention on the tools, on the components of the breath, of the rhythm, of the melody, et cetera, of the silence. And then I want to just come back to intention. Having the intention to be heard And in the case of the Zoom or the online meeting, the intention to have the voice carry through the bandwidth, just put it here. Put it in your head. I am speaking to the computer. My voice is going through the miles and landing in India and China and California and Brazil, et cetera, et cetera. So attention on the tools and intention to be heard.
Exactly. Yeah. So going back to there are so many elements, so many components to doing that. I would just, yes, as Peggy asked me about, my own workshop, where I would say, yes, how hard it is for people to keep this eye contact or the camera contact, where you look at the camera and you really start speaking. This is the one of the biggest fears and one of the biggest barriers for people is to be able to talk to a camera. So I think this would be one of the other things that can not help your communication if you don't overcome that fear. But what I would like to stress again, something that we have talked throughout and that Peggy mentioned and that Jill has mentioned too, and that we see in your techniques and in your communication skills, is that you have to, I think it's also very important to mention that you have to not only master the subject that you're going to talk about, which is very important for you when you have a presentation, when you have something that you have to present. You have to not only have rehearsed that, have practiced it to see what it's going to sound like, but there's also an element which is very important to bring this audience to you, which is passion for communicating, interest in communicating and being able to communicate with other people. This has, I don't know if that can be taught as well, but this is something that is very important in communication, that you're interested in seeing that communication come through. And you have talked about this, I think passion is very, passion for what you're talking about, for what you're wanting to show people. I think this is very impactful too. So maybe that answered a little bit of Victor's question.
Yeah, if I may, it's passion and also a sense of commitment to what you're saying. And I think we will lose a lot of people's focus on us if we start to lose commitment, vocal commitment. And this happens often when people just go trailing off at the end of a sentence, if you heard that. And that indicates that, well, I'm no longer interested in what I'm saying, so I forgive you if you're not. It almost invites people to not be interested anymore. And I will often say to people, you must support the vocality of your words right through to the end of the sentence and not trail off. And this, again, is much like, it's akin to what Jill was saying, to bring this downward stress to a sentence rather than this omnipresent upward stress, which is happening now so much when people introduce themselves by saying, hi, my name is Mark. I work in finance. I'm da-da-da-da. And it sounds like a list, and there's nothing particularly interesting about it that you couldn't read somewhere, and it just loses its commitment. So, some people might say it's hard to be passionate about, tax benefits, cross-border tax regulations or something like that. But if you can't be passionate about it, you can be committed to what you're saying. And that's, I think, that so important when you think about how the voice is married to the words.
And some people, if I can just jump in, some people don't like that word passionate, right, Peggy? It's too theatrical. But the word commitment, right? No, I like that.
Commitment is a great word, yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Although Kyung did use the word passion, I think, or her interviewer
Yeah, her interviewer.
Yes, she did. Yeah, so there are different degrees to passion and commitment, and also depends very much on the subject you're going to talk about, just as you said.
Yeah.
But also, I think that one key word you just said now is the invitation. You know, when you invite someone to be a part of it, when you show that you are, once again, it's the wish to communicate. I think that is also key. You know, when you invite, when you say, what do you think about, you know, you don't have to say that in these words, but what do you think about this that I'm saying? You know, maybe we can have a conversation about this. You know, even though I am the expert, and even though I am on stage, even though I am the presenter, I would also like to hear your thoughts, and maybe that can go, you know, subliminally to people, which brings me to my next question to you, Peggy. How the voice can help you establish or not rapport. You know, how can you say something more about that?
Yeah, the voice, as Jill was saying, there's so much power attributed to the tone of the voice. And if you're having a conversation where there's conflict, often the voices will not match. When we're in rapport, there's a lot of matching going on around vocal tone, around even breathing patterns, around our physical posture. And if you are sensing somebody is getting upset or emotional or something around a conflict, if you can then lead them to a more level, assertive tone, that could help, rather than, this sounds like a juxtaposition in a way, but rather than matching them with a high-pitched, angry tone, you might try and bring that tone, your own tone, a little lower, and hope that the other person will then bring their voice down to your level. So that's what rapport in that sense means. But rapport, the best definition I know of for rapport is mutual trust. And it's really not a question of getting everybody to like you, although if people like you, they're more likely to be in rapport with you. But it's hard to trust somebody who's arguing at a high pitch with their voice. And if you're doing the same thing, then that element of trust isn't going to be there. So you are going to try and use your technique to bring your voice down and hope that the other person will trust you and meet your voice down there. And then I think more concessions can happen. I don't think concessions can happen in a heated argument. I don't think successful negotiation can happen there.
I just wanted to jump in because Peggy, you bring up an interesting point. And back in the early days of me finding myself and finding my voice and finding my career, I did study a little bit of neuro-linguistic programming. And I don't know if you have yourself, Peggy, but what you talked about was this idea of, you know, how can we lead somebody to a tone that is more peaceful, that is more, you know, focused on dialogue and resolution. And one of the things I learned when I studied NLP and studied hypnosis is, you know, you can't go from here just to here without sounding perhaps condescending to somebody, right? Well, don't talk to me in that tone of voice, or, you know. So often what we need to do is we need to find a way to match the person, maybe without screaming at the same level, but we need to find a way to match them, whether it's with our physicality or our voice, and then, you know, slowly lead them where we want to go. So that pacing and leading becomes a really important technique when we talk about conflict resolution, because you can't lead somebody if they don't want to go, right? So I just wanted to add that. I don't know if that was something that you had ever studied yourself.
I have indeed. And I think this is what, to just go back to the fact that until we can be aware of these things, we have to identify and become aware of when we are losing control of our voice, when our intention is not being met with our practice. So we have to be constantly aware of these techniques, but also to come back to something Dominguez was saying, you have to think about so many things, the pace, the melody, I think optimum communication is a question of spinning plates. And if there are 100 plates to spin, it's really unlikely that you're going to be able to get 100 plates spinning all the time, and if you do, then the act's over and nobody's interested anymore. So what you're really thinking about is keeping aware of when a plate is wobbling, when your voice is going high, when you're losing control of your breathing technique, something like that. And I like to think of that as a wobbling plate. And if you're aware, you can focus your attention, to use your word, Jill, and keep that one going. But aiming for perfection is a losing game, I think. So just be aware. Allow yourself to have wobbling plates, because that is, just to finish the metaphor, the wobbling plates is what's exciting about the circus act. And that's what's exciting,
authenticity, right?
chilling about being alive. It's hard to get it perfect, and who knows if you ever will.
If I may, since we're on the topic of conflict resolution, and that's something that is very dear to us, that's what we deal with from the perspective of mediation, arbitration, negotiation, and knowing that both Peggy and Jill train people in that direction. Peggy trains, we haven't talked about this here, but she trains mock trials for a competition, a very large competition called the Wismut in Vienna every year, where the students arrive with one specific topic, one specific case to be solved. And Jill very much so in the corporate world. But since here, specifically, we're talking today also about gender and voice, gender and peace. I'd like to hear from the three of you. How do you think women are more prone to find a peace and conflict resolution in a negotiation? Especially if you're dealing in a world that's mostly populated by men. I've been thinking about the foreign minister of South Korea and the president of Taiwan, among many other women leaders from Germany, from Finland, from New Zealand, or also in the corporate world or in the legal world. How do women find their voice to match up to a situation of maybe unease because of it being such a male-populated world in that specific area that I'm talking about, politicians, and male leaders?
Peggy, you want to start?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just thinking about the coaching that has come about, particularly talking to women about how they can better manage themselves in a male-dominated meeting. And one of the things, and this isn't necessarily about the voice, well, it could be actually the tone of voice, but it's apologizing before you can contribute. So if you say, I'm sorry, or excuse me, I know we've been saying if I may, but we've been saying it with a firm voice, and that makes a difference. But if you're hesitant to make your contribution at a meeting, then you're likely to be overlooked. And so, don't start a contribution with for one thing or anything. Just say, I want to contribute at this point. At a level. Jill?
And you were just silent before you said that. And that bit of silence, right, really is powerful, because people sit and they wait, what is she going to say? She's not afraid to be silent. So I just heard you in that moment of silence. That was something I wanted to bring up. And I like that you just did that really powerfully.
So it's just using, this isn't about talent. This is just pure technique and understanding the psychological implications of being okay with pausing, of thinking for a moment, of not apologizing. This happens so much. Women particularly use their body language or the very words they use are apologetic and diminishing, and that is a habit that I encourage you to break, to lose that habit of constantly apologize. Of course, you should apologize for things that you do wrong. I'm not saying never say sorry, but I am saying don't apologize for expressing an opinion or contributing to a meeting.
I'd just like to add a little thing, Peggy, that there is I think it's a Mexican saying. I have a friend, she keeps telling me that. I wouldn't know how to say that in Spanish now, but it's just that, maybe women are used to that. And well, I certainly am. I don't know if it's a gender thing or not, but I was raised this way, which is, like in a meeting or in a moment where you have to express yourself, you're always saying, not sorry, but, they say, the Mexicans, going back to the Mexican saying, is like, you don't have to, it's better to say, I'm sorry, or what, no, do I get it wrong now? But, there's a difference between just saying, excuse me, I have to say something, then I'm sorry, I have to say something. I'm sorry, I would like to say something, So it's like, excuse me, I have something that I have to say.
Yeah.
And you have to listen to me because I am worthy of being listened to. So just to say that, I go with the South Korean foreign minister where she says, I just hope that there will be a moment when women are not going to be having to say, I'm the first woman leader and I'm the first woman but I think this is a moment where, just speaking up and being able to say, excuse me if you're, being polite, but I have something to say.
And it's also bringing together what we're talking about, this idea that the message does matter. And so if you can learn some key phrases to get your voice heard, to get onto the floor, and if you can learn how to use those phrases vocally, then you're going to be in the game. Then you're going to create an interest in you. And that's what you want to do in any communication, whether you're a woman, you're a man, whether you're Chinese, American, Brazilian, whoever you are. You want people to be interested. You want people to be thinking, I wonder what he wants to say. I wonder what she is thinking. And you do that by using the right language, meaning the right words, and then knowing how to deliver them. So that's what I would say to that, Jay.
Would we have any, I think we're almost coming up to the end of our meeting, because I would really like to, 5 more minutes, I'd just like to say, just going on further on that, Jill, as we talked so much about your accent training expertise, does having an accent matter when it comes to cooperation, agreements, settlements? How important is that? And I think we also have a few questions there. Maybe if we try to pop them in some,
I mean, I think you're bringing up a very sensitive topic, right? You're talking about having an accent in 2020. And if having an accent in what language? Well, in any language. If you're two Brazilians, but somebody is from Rio and somebody is from the interior, there could be some challenges with regard to the accent. If you are talking about international cooperation and you're bringing an American who has very little tolerance for people who don't sound like them, and a Spaniard, does accent matter? So let me just say that accent does matter. And I'm not going to tell you that you need to have, an American accent or a British accent or what have you. But let me just briefly say, if we go back to tribal times, when we lived in tribes, in groups, we had borders, we had boundaries. And when somebody appeared at the fence, at the border, and they didn't sound like us, it caused alarms to go off. It's innate in us as humans to say, oh my God, do I need to run? Do I need to fight? What do I need to do? They don't sound like me. I don't know if I can trust them. And so I just want to bring it up because it does matter in building trust that we at least understand that accents do play a role, and that there is unconscious bias that says, I don't know if I can trust that person if they don't sound like me. The more internationally minded a person is, the more exposure they have to different people, the more open they are, and the less exposure they have, the harder it is. So there's so much more I could say on this subject, but I do just want to say that it's not just a passion of mine because I've been doing it a long time. There are studies that go back to this tribal time that says, you know, if you don't sound like me, I have to work harder to understand you.
So let's see, we do have a few questions. Since we're talking a little about, well, there's a question from Tullio Januzelli. He's talking about Greta Kunberg. She has Asperger, which is a condition, a type of autism. She's the Swedish youth leader talking about climate change. You know, everybody has seen her on social media, and he wants to. He's talking about her style, which is perhaps an aggressive kind of style, but not only related to the theme of her speech. And he would like to know if there is. He would like to know if Peggy and Jill work with this capacity for analysis and improvisation, like identifying the type of issues in their clients, like physical or psychological issues that that will make you not follow formulas when you're coaching individuals. I guess this is the question. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand what the question is.
I think
there are many questions, I think, in the same question.
I think I followed it. I'll start and then maybe chime in. I think what Tullio is asking us is if you have a physiological or psychological challenge,
I see.
Can that, does that, and you can't follow the techniques as well because you have Asperger's, for example. How would we handle that? Was that the question? Or do we handle that? For me, I don't necessarily work in this area. For me, this could be speech pathology. This could be psychology. This doesn't fall into my realm of, you know, someone with the background of performance who understands the voice and the techniques. So for me, I wouldn't work on that necessarily. I don't know about you, Peggy.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't. Just trying to think back. I haven't, certainly not recently, worked with anyone who have any of these issues. But I'm thinking about a comedian, a female comedian, and I don't know her name. I should. And she has profound, I think, cerebral palsy, and she's on a lot of panel shows and comedy shows, and she's a great storyteller. And I'm just imagining that if she or someone like her came to me for some coaching, the last thing I would do is ignore it. And I think I would be very led by what my client wanted. And also I'd be very, very clear about what I am hearing, what I'm having difficulty in understanding, rather than trying to be apologetic. Look, I know it's really hard for you, and and to say, I have to say that as I listen to you, and sometimes this happens with people with strong accents, I have to say, I'm not understanding you, and I listen really well, and most people are not going to be listening that well. So you really need to, and I give this note so often, you need to slow down and you need to form your words. And so, you know, if someone like this woman I'm thinking of came to me, I would tell her exactly what I'm understanding, what I'm not understanding, and if I could help her, I would. But yeah, you know, kudos to her. She's really just taken it. And when I think of Greta Kunberg, when she went to the UN, I was again so struck with the totally appropriate emotion she had in her voice. How dare you? And it was just like this tiny little creature with this hugely grown-up voice just facing the UN and saying, you've stolen my childhood, you've stolen my future. she was incredibly powerful. So it tells you that you don't have to be big and brawny, but you do have to have commitment. And also, she speaks at a good, moderate pace and forms her words, but allowed her commitment to her emotions come out, but not in a quote-unquote hysterical way.
Very nice.
Great. Well, should we start closing? I think that, unfortunately our time is up, and I would just like to say that I'm so glad I had the chance to hear and to learn so much from these two professionals, to be here in this panel talking about how important it is to find your voice and finding what you have to say, to find other people's voices, and also to be able to have these voices be heard, which is a great step toward finding peace too. So thank you so much, Peggy. Thank you so much, Jill. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I hope that we can all, use our voice for peace. And I think that, we are on our way. I really hope so.
Thanks. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Guys, following up on some of the questions we had here, when Vitor asked, what do you do when you feel like you're losing attention, you're falling down? I mean, I'm not a natural in oral communications. I know that. Sometimes I start talking too fast. One of the things that I discovered, you can always start again. If you feel that you are starting too fast, stop, breathe, and start again. And also find a position, I don't know if it's a person that you admire, a plant, your religion, find something that empowers you, find a place of inspiration, And a place of inspiration for me today is being here with these 4 splendid, spectacular women, Peggy, Jill, and Dominguez. I can't thank you enough. And we're hoping that we can create a workshop now with our Global Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution in the near future. And also like at this moment to thank USP Women, UN Women, the DA's office at the state of São Paulo, APMP, who has been really supporting us, and especially all of you who are here today listening, and our stars. Okay? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming.